I love roguelikes. It's probably one of my favorite game genres, and I think the reason why is because it's so versatile. There's a roguelike for pretty much any other kind of genre you can think of. While I haven't played them all, I went on a quest to play 9 different roguelikes and report back my findings as somewhat of a veteran of the genre. I have to say, I have yet to play a bad roguelike. I'm sure they're out there, but there's genuinely nothing on this list that I would put below an 8 out of 10. And even then, that's more because I'm not a huge fan of the subgenre it's spliced with, so you're likely to enjoy some of these more than me and vice versa. Also, let me know of any others that I haven't played yet that you think I'd enjoy. There's plenty more out there that I have not touched yet. Number 9. God of War Ragnarok Valhalla. The only reason this one is number 9 is because it's not a standalone game, so I feel like it's kind of cheating to put it higher. It's impossible to separate it from the absolute behemoth of a game that God of War already is. But to drop a free DLC with an entirely new campaign within a couple days of announcement with this level of quality is an insane move. It doesn't change much from a gameplay standpoint, but if you like God of War, you will like Valhalla. It's got great new story content, it's got some fun new mechanics, it's challenging, it's got great nostalgia factor, it's a decent amount of content. It's missing some classic roguelike features like randomly generated levels, enemies and weapons, but again, I can't expect much considering for them to do that with a AAA game as demanding as God of War would have taken far too much time and effort. I believe this DLC easily would have been justified with a £20 price tag or more, but the fact that they just did it for the love of the game, like I said, insane move. 9 out of 10. I enjoyed it a lot more than some of the other picks, so I've given it a higher rating, but it's more of an honourable mention because it's not really a roguelike. 8. The Binding of Isaac. I know some of you are surprised to see this so low. I'm just personally not a big fan of bullet hells, but the main strength of Binding of Isaac is the sheer amount of content. I mean, it came out in 2011 and they've been steadily updating it since. It's a good blend of cute, silly and seriously fucked up, kind of like a chihuahua. I'd say the only weakness is the level layouts. The vast majority of the stages are just rectangles with some bits of cover and maybe a few pits. This does vary slightly with newer versions and certain bosses, but not nearly as much as some of the other entries on the list. There's not much I can say about this game that you don't probably already know, because it's probably the most iconic and recognizable roguelike in history. But if you want a good old-fashioned dungeon crawler with decent difficulty, incredible replayability, a solid soundtrack, and a fleshed out story to boot, you should try The Binding of Isaac, if you haven't already. And if you're not sure, the original version is on sale pretty often, so you can probably grab it for like £3. So maybe pick that up first, and when you inevitably get hooked, grab some of the larger and more recent versions. 8 out of 10, they turn the Bible into a bullet hell. 7. Enter the Gungeon. Again, not a huge fan of bullet hells, so that's really the only reason Binding of Isaac and Enter the Gungeon are so low, but in my opinion, this game does The Binding of Isaac better than The Binding of Isaac. There might not be nearly as much item variation or content, but I think it's more charming. The pixelated art style is cool, and the little touches of detail help the overall atmosphere, like the papers flying everywhere, the fact that pretty much all the enemies are just bullets or guns. You can kick over the candles, it's just cute, man, fucking leave me alone. The level designs are great and varied, so are the enemies, and each level has a different theme. Just like The Binding of Isaac, it also has great replayability, an equally great soundtrack, some cool lore, and it's a decent challenge. Speaking of which, the only negative reviews you'll find on Steam are basically about the difficulty, which I personally never had a problem with, but you've been warned, I guess. There is a co-op mode, which isn't great, to be honest, so that's really my only negative. Otherwise, it's a good, fun time. It's well worth it at £13. There's also a sequel spin-off which looks more like an old school 2D shooter that I haven't played yet, but it looks good, so maybe that's for a future list. 8.5 out of 10, a cute, charming way to introduce the whole family to the horrors of gun violence. 6. Slay the Spire. I love deck building and I love roguelikes. I knew I was gonna love Slay the Spire. I have the least playtime in this of everything on this list, but it's only because I picked it up for the sake of this video about 3 days ago, and since then, I cannot fucking stop playing it. However, my initial thoughts were kind of disappointing. For an 8-year-old game that's still £25 and has 100% on Steam, I thought it was gonna blow my fucking mind. The gameplay is incredible, the mechanics are well thought out, and the bosses do a great job at challenging any kind of build you craft. It's also addicting as hell, and that might be due to the difficulty. It's one of the harder ones that I've played for sure, which I adore, by the way. From a gameplay standpoint, it's infallible. I just think there's a lot to be desired with the overall presentation. It doesn't have the incredible soundtrack of The Binding of Isaac, the sound design of Dead Cells, or the art style of Hades. There is a second one set to drop this year, so maybe that will improve upon the details, but as it currently stands, I cannot in good conscience put it higher, especially because there's another deck building roguelike, which in my opinion, gets all those things right. Gameplay wise, probably a 10 out of 10, but overall, have to give it an 8.5 out of 10. It just needs some more polish, but if you can get past the rough exterior, it's awesome. 5. Noita. Probably the most unique game on the list and probably the coolest magic system in any game, period. Every pixel of the level is randomly generated and the amount of attention to detail makes you feel like a real wizard, complete with the shit armor class and health to boot. There's only one downside, and it is a pretty big downside. It's difficult. Really, really, really difficult. Which wouldn't be so much of a problem, but you need to put the time in to get some cool stuff. So starting out is just not going to be very fun. You are seriously ill-equipped. But once you get the cooler ones, you're still going to die. There's also a lot of modding potential, which I personally haven't played around with too much, but if you're into that kind of thing, I imagine it'd be pretty fun. The alchemy system is really the heart of the entire thing though. Every material and liquid acts realistically. This starts out simple enough with oil catching fire, water putting you out. You're gonna want to remember that one, by the way. Acid melted through metal, etc. But then you start to see the cool stuff. For example, if smoke gets trapped in a ceiling and you stand in it, you will choke to death. If you use a liquid to harden the top layer of lava, you can walk across it, albeit carefully. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. If you're damp enough, you can walk through most hazards safely. Of course, there's the standard roguelike elements like creating new wands and perks, but I recommend just trying it out for yourself. And you're gonna need to try it a few times. 8.5 out of 10. For the love of God, just keep some fucking water on you. 4. Spelunky 2. If I was being objective and not subjective, Spelunky might just be top of the list. It's painstakingly hard, it's got incredible level variation, it's got co-op, it's got loads of enemy variation, as many secrets as you want, a unique art style, cool lore, the controls are crisp. It's just excellently crafted. My only issue is that it's one of those games where you 100% need a guide. I know most people don't like hand-holding in games, but there is little to no way for you to figure out how to access the secrets without looking stuff up. For example, there's one level you need to access by taking a key to this chest, picking up this item, go to one of these 2 levels, either kill a vampire for his crown or buy it for 40,000 smackaroonies, beat the boss twice, pick up this thing, go to one of those 2 levels, either kill this thing or pick up this sword, sacrifice yourself either by tripping over into the wrong spot or taking a bath at your girlfriend's chosen temperature, kill either of these bosses, get this tablet which reveals one of these which you need to pick up and take it here so it will hatch into this thing which you need to keep alive until this boss and fly out to a secret level, and the game doesn't tell you any of that. On one hand, it's cool that there's so much content and love that went into the game, that many players are just never going to experience. On the other hand, it also makes it very fucking annoying when you have a great run but just get wombo comboed to death and lose all 25 of your lives. I just wish it did a little bit more to help you access these cool areas. It does also have probably the best co-op on the list, so that's a plus. 9 out of 10, enough content and speedrun potential to keep it fresh for decades. 3. Inscryption. Inscryption is one of the most ambitious games I've ever played. The gameplay is constantly changing. It's like playing 4 games in one. But it's always the same premise and it's always fun. Personally, I think it never got as fun as Act 1, but with the story and how cool the plot twists and mysteries are, I will happily take that trade. I can't say much without spoiling it, but it's one of those games that you'll enjoy more the less you know about it, so I'm going to keep this one short. It's a deck builder with an incredible horror aesthetic, cool puzzles and solid progression. 9 out of 10, imagine if Slay the Spire and Bendy and the Ink Machine had a baby. 2. Dead Cells. I'm partial to quick, white-knuckled, high-octane hack-and-slash gameplay, and that's exactly what Dead Cells gives me. You don't necessarily have to play that way if you prefer the tactical or survival over brutality approach, but that's when I think Dead Cells is at its best, for me anyway. It's got tons of items, tons of content, difficulty modifiers, a great art style, tons of enemies, tons of levels. The sound design is also just so crisp. Every weapon, parry and movement sounds extremely satisfying. It's just overall really fun to play. I'm clearly not the only one who thinks so, since the game is littered with plenty of references and DLCs from other roguelikes and Metroidvanias, so it's pretty popular in the genre. I didn't really dive too much into the lore or the story, but it's very obviously there. There's a good blend of menacing foreboding in the world building, mixed with your character's sarcastic and apathetic reactions. It's pretty goofy. To start with, it's not majorly difficult, so it's more beginner friendly than some of the others on the list. But slap a couple boss cells on that bitch and nothing's more tense than being face to face with your own hubris because you decided to open the cursed chest and are now one hit away from losing all your hard-earned gear. 9.5 out of 10, the Punchaku is one of my favorite weapons of all time. Number 1, Hades. Pretty much all the things I love about Dead Cells I also love about Hades. The only thing that edges it out is the presentation. Kind of like why I prefer Inscryption over Slay the Spire. The soundtrack, animations, art style and characters are iconic in Hades for good reason. Those bass lines do something to me. Something primal. I haven't played Hades 2 yet, as I want it to be finished when I do, but it can't come soon enough. This isn't to say those things are lacking in Dead Cells or any of the other titles, but Hades is just different. When I first heard Mega's voice, I think I re-hit puberty and it hit me back hard. Honorable mention to Medusa, who I guarantee gives the craziest head game you've ever seen. Sorry, I'm getting kind of lost in the sauce. I've always loved Greek mythology anyway, since I was a Percy Jackson kid through and through, so interacting with all the gods and myths was probably just as enjoyable for me as the gameplay. They're all so cool and charming. Shout out to the boy Boldy. Plus, the story is cool, it feels faithful to the dysfunctional family of Olympus that we've all heard so much about. The weapon aspects and heat gauge system allows for infinite replayability and difficulty toggles. The gods are all good for different kind of builds, so you'll naturally gravitate towards and like the ones who let you play the way you want. The little collectibles you can get, the designing of the hub world, the characters' individual subplots, the sexual tension between a man and his bull, the coming to terms with Zagreus being British for some reason. It's just the little stuff that edge it out over everything else, on top of the incredible fast-paced gameplay. The only real issue I have is that there's not more variation. If there were some alternating pathways, bosses, or enemies, it could have been a perfect game for me. 9.9 out of 10, just as bisexual as a game about ancient Greece should be. That's my personal list, and let me know if you have any other roguelikes you want me to play, or your own list. If this does well, I already have a few lined up which I've never touched, like Don't Starve Together and Faster Than Light. Hope you enjoyed. Hope I introduced you to a couple games you enjoy. So thanks for watching.